Sir Henry, and it's a pleasure to serve under you today. I'd also like to thank my neighbour, the Right Honourable Member for Twickenham, who's achieved this debate. I'd also like to thank the House of Commons Library, who released this week an excellent summary of where we are and how we've got there. It's neutral, it's dispassionate, but it's factual, and it pulls together all of the kind of references that we need for a debate like this. I'd also like to thank the No Third Runway Coalition for their help in briefing some of us for this debate today. So, Sir Henry, I am not going to cover, as we've done it between us many times before, the details of the impacts of a third runway, the net cost to the economy, according to the DFT figures, the details of the increased air and noise pollution. We have had and will have many other opportunities in this House and in other places to raise these issues. I want to focus on the current public consultation, but I will just put the context. My constituency, Brentford and Isleworth, lies immediately to the east of Heathrow Airport, and two-thirds of my constituents live underneath the approach path of the existing two runways on Westerly, and the other third of my constituency will be underneath the approach path to the third runway. So this is a massive issue for my constituents.
Thank you for giving away so early. And I would compliment her speech. She hasn't given it yet, but I know it'll be brilliant because she's an absolute stalwart campaigner on this issue. One of the problems which you not agree with the consultation is that we know that hundreds of thousands of new people are going to be affected by noise, but we don't know which hundreds of thousands because the government and Heathrow are yet to tell us where the new flight paths will be, which renders the entire consultation process entirely disingenuous, if not dishonest. It's a bit like saying we're going to put a new incinerator in the honourable member's constituency and we'd like to ask people their opinion, but we're not going to say where it's going to be put. Surely the entire basis of this consultation has a question mark hanging over it in terms of its legitimacy.
Ruth Cadbury. The honourable member, my other neighbouring Member of Parliament for Richmond Park, has stolen one of my key points. I will come on to that. So not only are my constituents either living under the current or the proposed or the inevitable flight paths, but also living between central London and Heathrow, we have the traffic congestion and the associated air pollution. So this is a really big issue for us. Now, in terms of consultations, it feels like I've been on this issue for over 15 years, but prior to coming to this place, I was a lead member of Hounslow Council. And it feels like we've been in perpetual consultations. And again, this report from the House of Commons Library does list a lot of these processes. We had in the autumn the government consultation on the draft national policy statement on airports and the associated consultation, and I really felt sorry for DFT staff in that consultation because so many of the answers to the questions that local residents asked them was, I'm sorry, I don't know, or I'm sorry, we don't have that information yet. And I see the same thing happening again with the Heathrow Airport staff in this newly relaunched consultation. So last week, Heathrow Airport Limited launched their consultation on a slightly different proposal from the NPS consultation. But so far as my constituents are concerned, there's not a lot of difference. So, I mean, what is clear in the Heathrow consultation is what is not clear. So little is said. And I just have to read out a key quote in their consultation document. We have been assessing the design options for developing a scheme which meets the government's requirements for an expanded airport whilst responding to the needs of local communities and mitigating environmental impacts. Well, that looks like we'll see some detail. I go on, we are still working through this process and therefore there is not yet a fixed master plan for the expansion of Heathrow. Now, if it's not yet possible to map the detailed impact on local communities, what is the point of consulting right now? What my constituents want to know is, number one, where is the approach path to the third runway? And there is no reason why you can't actually map that now, because the runway is there. We're within 6 miles of the airport. All flights will be locked into final approach. It's basic physics. So why can't they tell us where the approach path, how high the planes will be, how wide the approach path is? We're not in one of those areas where there can be concentration or spreading out. We are so close to the airport, all planes have to be locked in, at least on approach. I just think it's deliberate that we're not being told. It's okay, because we're going to tell people that they're going to be underneath the flight path. And I challenge Heathrow Airport or the Department of Transport to tell us we're wrong. There's very little information on respite. We have a marginal improvement on previous situations where there will be no night flights for 6.5 hours. But no night flights in our real life world doesn't actually mean no flights overhead for those night periods. It actually means no scheduled night flights, but there might be emergency, there might be VIP, there might be medical flights and so on. And all of them probably have a good reason, but actually with the biggest, one of the busiest airports in the world, there's seldom a time when there are actually no flights at all during those periods. And certainly the rules are not as strict in the UK as they are in other jurisdictions. Air quality. What will the air quality implications be if there is no diesel scrappage scheme? A congestion charge, how will that affect the many, many local businesses and residents who need to travel around the airport even if they're not actually using the airport? What will the new transport infrastructure be? There have been many questions about that. And of course, nationally we're all concerned who is going to pay for it, because there's no clarity on how the actual runway and terminal buildings and essential work will be paid for, and there's certainly no clarity or agreement on how the essential traffic impacts will be. And traffic impacts isn't just passengers, it's not just people who work at Heathrow, it's not just the freight. Oh, by the way, doubling the amount of freight going in and out of Heathrow with no additional freight vehicle movements? No clarity about how that's going to work, and I challenge any transport engineer to actually map that. But the one that nobody ever seems to mention is the additional flight servicing. There will be 47% more flights with runway 3. That to me means 47% more journeys in and out of the airport servicing those flights. The catering vehicles, the long-haul flight crews who stay at our local hotels and are bussed in. Nothing about that. Of course, that will add additional impact, additional pressure on the local transport infrastructure. So I can see that I don't have any more time, and I have deliberately focused on the omissions in the consultation on the issues that most affect local residents in Brentford and Isleworth. Thank you very much, sir.